how to support and monitor home learning, how to support children's executive functioning, and any opportunities to build on extra home learning. So first of all, in terms of why home learning is beneficial, there are a number of reasons, to be honest. It can reinforce new learning. So if your child is learning a new topic in school and you're able to consolidate that at home, that can be really helpful. It can also extend their learning. So if school has ignited a passion in your child, they may choose to come home and they want to find out a little bit more about a topic of particular interest. So they could dig deeper into that. It can be used as pre-learning. So if you know that your young person's going to be studying a particular topic in school, you could do a little bit of work ahead of that so that they're prepared for that learning and they have a little grasp to begin with. A big one when you've got older students is to help them to prepare for exams. So both the revision side and the technique of exams, that can be particularly helpful to get a lot of practice in before the big day. Homework can be used to check understanding. So, for example, a multiple choice test could be sent home so that a teacher knows how much they've picked up and absorbed during class. Also, homework can be particularly useful for students to develop time management skills and independence. So beyond the kind of security of the classroom environment, can they be committed to their learning in a home situation and manage their own time and their independence? Also, improving their research skills. So homework can be a task where students have got time to go away to think about something and do some further research. And research skills are particularly important if your child wants to go on and study further, for example, at a college or a university setting in the future. So in terms of creating a positive learning environment, there are a few strategies that we can use to make it a more, not just inviting, but a more suitable setting to complete home learning. Some of these are common sense. You'll probably have an idea of quite a few of them already, but some of them might be food for thought. So having a clear workspace, particularly for neurodivergent young people, the more clutter and things that are around, the more distractions there are. So having a clear workspace, a clear and organised workspace is a really good canvas to start your home learning with. Be equipped. There's nothing more frustrating than starting a piece of homework and realising that you don't have the necessary tools, whether that's a calculator or the right type of pencil for an art homework, perhaps. Being equipped is an important part to facilitate a positive experience in home learning. I mentioned distractions a moment ago, so not just on the desk space, but surrounding. For example, you might choose to encourage your child to do their homework on the dining table as opposed to their bedroom, because maybe there are devices or music distractions that might not support their home learning. So yeah, try and have a low stimulus environment for them to do their work in. Physical needs. So make it comfortable, make it accessible. That will help support them. I know young people sometimes might say, well, I want to do it on the floor or I want to do it on the couch. If that's the only way they'll do their homework, then go with it. But in terms of posture, you can start getting a sore back if you're slouched on the couch. So I always encourage sitting at a desk, sitting in a chair with a back at a desk. That's the best kind of environment to support those physical needs. Further on physical needs, particularly with ADHD young people, the opportunity for some sensory stimulation can be really useful. So whether that is fidget toys or elliptical cycle machine under the desk, or even elastic against the chair that young people can kind of bounce against, that opportunity to release a little bit of dopamine can really help with the brain function. Time targets. Time targets can be really useful as a motivator, whether it's, I just need you to do 8 minutes on, we'll do as many questions as we can, and then we're going to go for a bike ride, and then we'll come back and we'll do another 8 minutes. So breaking it down and setting those time targets, it can also make your young people feel an increased sense of control. So help them be part of the decision making. Well, how shall we split up our homework? Shall we do an hour now, or should we do 15 minutes and then we'll, go for a nice lolly or whatever it is? Also considering noise. So some young people work better if they have the headphones in and some music in the background, or you may choose noise cancelling headphones, or you might just think about the environment that you're in, but do be aware of the disruption that sometimes extraneous noise can have on concentration. In terms of supporting and monitoring home learning, a lot of schools have apps that they use to both communicate and also to set homework on. So my children, for example, use class charts and Synergy. So there's a way that you can check what homework they've got and if that has been submitted or not. That's really quite useful to know where you are in terms of their submission and is it being completed, and the quality of their submission as well. Some schools give feedback on that. Also, in terms of monitoring home learning, it's really important to have open, honest and clear communication lines with school to work productively for each child. So if you think that homework is a concern, or you are not sure if your child's meeting the standard, or actually you might feel that it's not benefiting your young person, please do have a conversation with the staff, with the teacher, to help to keep those communication lines open. You may set goals together, so both in terms of with your child, helping them be part of the decision making, and also with the class team and the teacher, because particularly with neurodivergent children in a setting, particularly a special educational needs setting, homework might be a real challenge, and you might need to be realistic about the goals that you set. Read and reward. So this is quite a good one, I think, in terms of giving homework some status, making sure that you are reinforcing that by, oh, I really like that poster that you've made, that you're able to have a look and show interest and investment in the work that they do. Give them praise. Wow, I'm really impressed you could work that out. I would have struggled with that one. And that makes it, again, a more positive experience. I also find that ring fencing time to complete homework is a really useful one. So having a slot of time in the week that this is our hour and a half that we want to focus on getting our homework done. And by all means, building breaks within that, but having that kind of, this is our time, this is when we're going to get it completed. That can help with the executive functioning, both for your young person and for yourselves as parents, because that mental load, the busyness, particularly if you're working yourself or you have other children, and particularly if those children have needs as well, your mental load is high. So it's useful sometimes to build in that ring fence time, that this is when we sit down, we'll have a glass of lemonade and we'll do our homework together and try and make it a positive experience. So I have touched on a couple of executive functioning challenges that our children and you as parents will come into contact with as you go through and support your child with their learning and their day-to-day functioning and interaction with the world. So I'm just going to go through a few of these before we look at strategies to support executive functioning. So in terms of Emotional control. Students can overreact and find criticism particularly hard. They can take feedback personally sometimes. In terms of flexible thinking, students, particularly if your young person has pathological demand avoidance, they might have a set way that they want to do a task. And if you're asking them to think outside of that, that can become a source of conflict, and it can be particularly frustrating if they have that inflexibility of thinking. Impulse control. If homework is becoming tough, young people can feel that impulse control can be impeded, and they can, for example, behaviour could be negative. They might end up ripping up a piece of paper if they feel frustrated with the homework. Working memory. You can have trouble remembering instructions even with support. Working memory can be a real challenge for our young people. Planning and prioritising. It's hard sometimes for students to decide what the important part is for a task. So, for example, if they've been set a task to identify the different, I'm trying to think of an example here, identify the different muscles in the body and then describe what they are used for. The two phases of the task can make that a little overwhelming. So breaking that down with them, let's prioritise what we need to do, or let's plan how we're going to attack the question. First of all, can we name the bones or the muscles, next, let's then, for each of those muscles that we named, what do they do? Let's describe how they work. So helping them to prioritise their tasks. That could even be in terms of you've got a homework due for Tuesday and you've got a homework due for Friday. It's Monday now. We need to focus on the Tuesday homework because the deadline is quicker. So helping them to prioritise is developing that important skill that they're going to need for future life as well. Task initiation. This can be a really difficult one, particularly if students feel a little overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. And then finally, organisation can be a real challenge, not just in terms of belongings. If your child's anything like mine, they permanently leave a sweatshirt in school and their water bottle is on a bench somewhere. Not just with belongings, but organisation can also be in terms of losing their train of thought, and then that impacts how they can complete a task. So we've gone through the challenges. Let's have a look at some of the strategies that we can employ to support them. So establishing clear routines. So having a consistent daily routine in terms of time for waking up, time that we have meals, ring fencing that time for homework, structured bedtime. This can help structure their day, and it then reduces the mental load of planning. So if it is part of your routine, there's not that same kind of mental load of fitting that in somewhere else. Using visual schedules or checklists. So particularly if you use Widget, which is like a software that creates little pictures that can help support young people to picture what their day will look like. This can be helpful for complex or 2-phase, 3-phase, 4-phase tasks, like a morning routine or multi-step homework. So creating checklists or visual charts can help them to remember what to do and how to stay on track. Teaching time management skills. So you may choose to set alarms or timers to help them to estimate and manage time, and break larger tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. I touched earlier on prioritising. So if you perhaps have a post-it with each of your homework tasks on, you could stick these on a wall or a whiteboard, for example, to choose the order that they will be completed in order of priority. And it's important, prioritisation can be a dynamic process. So that might change as your week goes on as to which is the priority, what do we need to put some work into. And that's a really useful tool for young people for the future. Encouraging flexible thinking. So I find in our setting, our students have some of the most creative, outside the box ideas of how to approach tasks. And it's really important that we play to those strengths as much as we can. But we also encourage them to practice flexible thinking, and could we do it in another way? How could we remember this? So encourage those flexible thinking opportunities. Setting up a brain break routine. So I alluded to this earlier, it's particularly useful to build in opportunities for movements during home learning or even in school learning. It's really important that we provide opportunities for students to be active, to release that dopamine, which can really help stimulate the brain and improve their focus and concentration when they come back to a task. Again, this could be bouncing a softball, a tennis ball against the wall. This could be going outside and doing some star jumps or skipping, whatever your young person chooses to do, kicking a ball against the wall, perhaps, if that's not too annoying for you. These are all strategies that can be good brain breaks for young people. Using positive reinforcement. So I'm really pleased that you've sat at the table to do your homework. Let's do something nice once we've finished this, or having a look at a piece of homework. You've really worked hard on this piece of homework. I'm really proud of you, and I'm proud of how hard you're working. I can see the effort that you've put into this. So helping to support that growth mindset. A piece of homework doesn't have to be perfect. We're not striving for perfection, but we do want progress. So giving them that recognition that they're trying hard, that's really important. Teaching organisational skills. So it's important that they are involved in having an organised workspace, having the materials that they need, encourage them to make sure things are accessible, and have a routine for setting up before homework. Have you got a water bottle? Have you got your stationery? Do you have your fidget toy? Wonderful. Let's set your timer. Off you go. And they could then perhaps have that as a tick list. So they could then set themselves up and teach themselves those organisational skills. Model self-monitoring. So asking questions like, how did that go? How could we do it differently next time? Will help them to reflect on their own processes and outcomes. So that kind of self-reflection opportunity is really useful. I've already mentioned this on, I think I've already talked about growth and patience. So recognise when they struggle. I can see you struggling with that. Let's try and have that growth mindset. Let's keep going, even though it's difficult, and focus on progress over perfection. So there's some strategies for supporting executive functioning. Extra home learning. So if you have not had enough of home learning by the time you finish the work that is set by school, here are some opportunities that you might choose to build on. Reading regularly is a massive priority in my school in particular, but I think nationally reading is a real focus, and there's some real solid evidence as to why reading can be so crucial and so important for young people. So both academic, economic, mental health, well-being, cognitive and social benefits have all been reported from reading. The way that you read with your young person, it can be, again, ring fencing some time as a family that we sit down with a book on a Sunday. That could be a really nice thing for you to be able to do as well. It also could be that you read to them. Even listening has some benefits. You might take turns with your young person, read a paragraph or a sentence each or a word each. Equally, you could read and they could follow along with their finger in the book. So that's another way you could prioritise reading. And I think role modelling is a really important one. By your child seeing you reading, they see it's something pleasurable, it's something enjoyable, and that can then be modelled and replicated by them. Displaying keywords, spellings and definitions. Around exam time, I know parents that I've spoken to have reported it's like having, like a posters all around the kitchen. They themselves knew that what the triggers were to World War II, because there were so many revision resources pasted around their house. But it could just be simply having a worksheet with the key spellings for their year, perhaps. And then when you have breakfast, you might test them on one each day, or they could check themselves. So having keywords or key formula displayed, that can be that opportunity to absorb it even when you're not focusing on your schoolwork. Incorporating learning into everyday activities. So that could be that when you go to the garden centre as a family, that you say, oh, well, what part of the plant is this? Well, what does this do? Why doesn't this have a stamen, for example? So that could be something really useful you can do. Or whether you go out for a walk and you measure your heart rate afterwards. Oh, why is my heart beating faster? They might even be able to give you some of the answers, but embedding that can be really useful if you get the opportunity to travel, go abroad, use the language in a subject that they're studying. That is a really good way of inspiring them and embedding that. But obviously that's, that might not be practicable for you, but there's so much, we can do in the everyday. Even if it's counting the change when you're in a shop, how much change should you have if we buy this chocolate bar, for example? If I give you £1, can you work out how much the change should be? Guide and limit screen time. So devices can be a real pull for young people. So there's 2 different strategies we can use in terms of limiting screen time, using timers, linking it to your own device so that you can manage how much screen time they have, and also which apps they go on and which apps they do have screen time for. But also guiding them. So you could install some really useful apps, and I'll touch on some of those on my next slide, so that, if they're using the device, that they might choose to go on YouTube for a spell, but once they've been timed out, could you go on Century or whatever, Trello, whichever app it is that you're encouraging them to use. Spelling bee, there's lots of different, like Wordle even. These are really just interactive kind of educational games that they can play. Finally, and this is a big one, well-being first. So when working with young people who are neurodivergent, it's apparent that until a young person's regulated, learning can't take place. So it's great to support your child, but if homework is adding to stress or anxiety, it's really important that you get in touch with school and explain your challenges. They might be able to support you, give you advice, or they could even adapt their expectation to meet the needs of your child. Home is their sanctuary, so whilst home learning is really important and it can be really positive, it's important that we support young people's well-being first. Right, finally, some resources. So there are a number of assistive technologies that can help with executive functioning, particularly flexible thinking, working memory, planning and prioritising, task initiation and organisation. I'm going to mention a couple of those in a moment. I touched on electronic timers and alarms on mobile phones earlier. Organisers and calendars on computers. So these can be effective, particularly if they have a visual, as I mentioned earlier, to illustrate the activity. Online essay planners can be used to help structure writing. I've seen some of these on BBC websites. These are useful, particularly if they are completing a piece of extended writing in a subject like English or history. Spell checkers and grammar checkers, they can be useful, particularly so that you can prioritise downloading the information from your brain onto paper without being too fussy about the spelling and the grammar, and then going back and checking that at a later date. So if you use Word and you enable your spell checker, it will highlight a red line underneath. So if you kind of focus on getting the content down first of all, and then you can go back and do the spell check and the grammar later, that's a useful way to support executive functioning. Speech to text software, so ChatGPT and similar AI are quite effective at downloading and capturing ideas quickly to avoid having the extra demand on their working memory. So you can even have dictating apps that you can use so that you can articulate your answer and then you can put it down on paper afterwards. Or some of them even do that for you so that you dictate and it will automatically type the response for you. There are many educational apps such as Trello, Luminosity, Khan Academy that are quite useful. So Trello, and some staff who work at Pontville use this really effectively, and it can support planning, prioritising, organisation and task initiation. So tasks can be sorted into columns of to-do lists or to-do, doing and done. And that can create some sense of reward as they see those swiped away and gone. And it's also a good way to kind of work on that task initiation as well, so that students know what they need to do first, next and last. Going less technological, simple post-its, tick lists or mini whiteboards can be quite good so that students can either prioritise the task, put things in a list, cross or tick them off, screw them up and put them in the bin, however it makes them, however they get the most out of that to-do list. And then I've touched on also that priority list of having today, this week and next week, maybe with post-its, or you might have a big whiteboard to help your child to prioritise what they need to do. They are a range of different strategies. I really hope that some of them will be useful to you. That's everything that I wanted to go through. So I think Jodie will facilitate some question and answers now if you have any. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Anna. That was a great presentation. We've had quite a few questions come through, so we'll try to answer as many as we can. Our first question is, my child gets very upset and distressed if they don't get full marks on their homework. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, that's common. And I think my advice would be, in terms of full marks from the homework, it would be worth communicating with school and asking if they could set maybe a target for them to be their full marks, if that makes sense. So if it was out of 10, if a teacher could possibly share, if you can get 6 out of 10, I will be so impressed, and there will be, I don't know, there might be a reward, there might be a sticker, it could just be a green tick, but it's that aligning expectation. Whilst we want them to be ambitious, we want them to want to get top marks, it can be really crushing for their kind of self-confidence and their self-belief if they are getting things wrong. I do empathise with that. I think it's also about prioritising that growth mindset of progress over perfection. I hope that's helpful. I know that's not a perfect solution, but hopefully a strategy that could support.
That's great, thank you. Our next question is, do you have any tips for a young person who is refusing to do homework completely?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. So I think it's important, again, to have that communication with school. Is it essential that he or she or they do the homework? Is there a way that they could do that learning in school, either in an activity or a break time, if it is a real block between, I don't believe I should do work at home, with that point blank refusal? I think, and I'm sure this parent will have already tried this, but having a motivator, some kind of reward if they do complete some home learning at home, or even if you could also start by having a very low expectation and demand I've just got 3 questions I would like you to do, or I want you to practice one spelling. We're going to do it 3 times. And if you do that, I'm going to give you some reward time doing an activity of your choice. I think that would be my advice for that parent.
That's great, thank you. Our next one is, my son is very hyperactive and can only sit for a short time. When I try to do short activities and give a movement break, he doesn't want to come back to do more. So I struggle to increase the amount of work. Any ideas, please?
So in that situation, something you could try, I did mention it earlier, but it's called a QBI, Cubii, and it's like an elliptical cycle machine for your feet that you put underneath the desk. So effectively, you can stay at your desk while still being active. I think if the coming back from a task, if coming back from a break is the difficulty, could you incorporate some kind of movement at the desk? Or even you could research or look into, or even adapt or kind of make your own version of a standing desk. I know a lot of people who now work from home have looked into a walking desk. So you can have like a work surface at a specific treadmill, not just any treadmill. I'm not saying go and fashion your own of this. But there are walking desks that you can now get which encourage that movement while you're still working. And I think that would be, in terms of the movement at the desk, if the struggle is coming back from that break, either try a reward or either try and have the movement at the desk if you can.
Thanks, Anna. Our next question is, as a parent, I find myself sitting with my child with ADHD just to make sure he doesn't distract himself or do something on the screen without permission. Is this counterproductive to sit with him? I
think as a parent, you know your child better than anyone else. So I would go with your instinct. I think whilst it is useful to develop that independence, if you still feel like stepping away from the screen will lead to, an undesired behaviour, you might choose to sit with them while they do that homework. You could then try and build up that independence as to if they're sitting and doing their work and they've been, if you think actually they've just started, so I know they're concentrating and they're not over that peak of concentration yet, time that independence wisely. So you could step away from the desk, go and put the kettle on, or whatever it is that you want to do, and then come back and give them that reward. Brilliant, you're still focused, I'm so pleased with you for that, let's do something nice later. I think try and better than anyone, what they need in terms of their concentration. Try and build up that independence. But also, don't rush it, go at their pace as well. Because I think what you do find is with age and maturity, that ability to develop those strategies, executive functioning strategies, you'll see that grow and grow. So don't think you're going to be sat on the shoulder forever. Just if you think they need it still, by all means, I think that's still supportive.
That's great, thank you. Our next question is, hi, my daughter is in year 8 now and we're struggling to get her to do homework. She won't even start it, saying she doesn't want to do it. Do you have any advice on how to support her? She's very intelligent and capable. We just can't motivate her at home.
I think without knowing a little bit more context, I can give you my response, but it might be limited. So I would be trying to unpick the reasons why she's struggling so much, to initiate the homework or refusal to start the homework. I wonder if this is having a negative impact on her progress in school. If it is having a negative impact generally, if it's not just the homework, if it's also in school, that's a conversation to have with school staff. What do we need to do to support her? But maybe do a little bit of digging as well as to, has something changed? is there a barrier or a blocker that I can address with her? I think also it is difficult that I think there are very few teenagers who will happily and independently get out their homework, do it to an acceptable standard, submit it on time. So as reassurance to that parent, please don't feel alone in that. I think it's there are many parents who struggle to, to get their young person engaged in home learning. So try and make it positive if you can. Reward small success. Well, can we just do 10 minutes of this, and then we'll go out and have a hot chocolate. Come on, do a little bit with me. But also try and do a little bit of unpicking as well. Is there a reason why she's not stopped or not going to refusing to complete any homework, and liaise with school as well.
Thanks, Anna. Our next question is, my son loves Fortnite. Is giving him more time on Fortnite a suitable reward for good behaviour, or is this counterproductive by giving him more addictive screen time?
Oh, that's a hard one. As a Fortnite mum myself, I understand the pull that can have, particularly with neurodivergent children. Their interests can be very niche, very specific, and very narrow as well. So if Fortnite is the only motivator that you can use, and they're an appropriate age, obviously, then by all means, use it to kind of support them to do the desired behaviour. Obviously, there's a lot of guidance out there that you can look at in terms of screen time, what students should be having, or the maximum that they should have, what's appropriate. So I think use it as a motivator if that's the only thing that is motivating. And as I said earlier, our young people, we're very protective over them. We try and do everything we can to make sure that everything is perfect. And for us as parents, as well as we need to remember that we can't be perfect, that we have to be focused on progress and be supportive and kind of adapt things the best we can to support the priority and the need of our child.
Thank you. Our next question is, my son is 7 years old. He's autistic and has ADHD. He's verbal and goes to mainstream school. Emotional dysregulation has been a prime cause of meltdowns and conflict at home. It has been very challenging and difficult to do any form of learning at home. Do you have any advice?
So again, I would liaise closely with school to outline the difficulties that you are having with home learning and ask if there is any, how important is the home learning to their progress? Because if school are telling you it really is crucial, they really are struggling with this certain aspect, I really do want that to be supported at home, then by all means it's important to persevere with that. However, if you do speak to school, they might say, well, actually, considering the needs of your child, I think that rather than cause an escalation at home and increase the kind of anxiety and the upset for your family, it might be the case that they can either facilitate the home learning in school, or that they say, well, it's not a priority for us right now. But that's why that liaison with school is really important, to find out how crucial the home learning is for them, and so that school are fully aware of the challenges that you're experiencing at home and the way you're having to support your child. Also, you could when you get in contact with school, you could say, do you have any suggestions or strategies that you're finding effective in school that I could transfer to home? And whether that is having like a low stimulus environment, whether that is having some sensory toys, some movement breaks, they could all be strategies that might be helpful with supporting home learning. But yeah, liaise closely with school.
Thanks, Anna. Do you have any tips on breaking down things like maths, worded questions, and coding for exams? My son is in year 9 and he's struggling with this, which is impacting his performance.
So this is tricky because often in exam papers, you will find that there is that complexity in the questions, that they will give a wider context, and that can often throw off a young person and make that quite difficult. So I think I would liaise with the subject teachers if you can. Is there a way that you can break down the questions? So for me, if I was looking at an example with my child or one of the students that I teach, it's about helping them to be able to break it down themselves, because that is the type of question they will come up against in the future in an exam. So it's kind of helping them to do that executive functioning. So when I mentioned earlier about that prioritizing task and also about that flexibility of thinking, these are the skills that can be practiced, that can be worked on, and that then will help your I think it was your son in the future to be able to answer those questions. The subject teachers might have some specific strategies that they can share with you, but as a parent, and I'm not either a computing or a maths specialist, so I would be in the same shoes as you, but I would be looking at the question, help breaking that down with your child if you can. But yeah, as I say, get that support from the subject teacher. How do I break this down? And then that can help guide you.
That's brilliant, thank you. Do you have any advice for explaining to my child with ADHD why homework is important now for their future?
So I think everyone who's attended the training will receive the slides from this presentation, and there is one slide that highlights some of the benefits. I think students have to believe in the benefit to be invested in it, in all honesty. So by kind of showing, there are a range of statistics out there as well, that you can use to your advantage to be able to demonstrate that students who achieve higher or achieve the best results, and then they go on to study higher at a higher level, will have increased average earnings over their lifespan. So if you have a little look for that, that might be able to add some kudos to it. If you have any role models that you're aware of that could to your child, that could reinforce that message as well, that's really helpful. At Witherslack Group, we run a futures program where we have employers who do a lot of work with our young people, and they come in and they talk about their profession, how they got into their profession, why it's important, to work on what you would have to do to follow in that career path, which subjects are crucial for it. That is really helpful if they've got a career path in mind, that you can say, if this is what you want to go on and do, it's really important that you are investing your time. I think particularly with for young people with ADHD, it's that immediate, isn't it? The long term, it's really hard to picture. So it's helping them to kind of future focus, so that they can think, well, if I do put this investment in now, it will have a long-term gain. So having a few of those short-term wins, let's work hard for this test, then we put the work in, then we get the results, then you've got something to prove, well, that was beneficial. So if we can do that again in the lead up to your exams, then it will be beneficial again. Then you will get the results. And it's that knock on that all these small steps can have on your future, and how the short term can build into the long term. I totally understand the difficulty there. But yeah, what I would say is just try and set small goals, give the reward, and try and kind of build some some investment in home learning.
That was great, Anna. We've got time for one more question. And our question is, my son is 5 and is in mainstream school. He is autistic with demand avoidance, and the school keeps saying that he's not learning in school. Should the school provide one-to-one teaching for him?
So I think there's a process to follow there. I would have close communication with the school, with the school SENCO in particular. If you feel like school is not meeting the needs of your young person and they have already got an existing diagnosis, I certainly think that's worth raising and escalating with them, to make sure that your child is getting the support that they need to succeed there. So yeah, I would speak to school, make sure, be very clear about the diagnosis. If you've had the diagnosis, if you've not had the diagnosis, I would start the process, get the ball rolling, because that's really important in terms of, the HCP, so that once that's in place, then the provision can be put in for your school.